Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this evening's guest moderator, Eugene Hernandez from the Film Society of Lincoln Center, and tonight's guests, Matthew McConaughey and Jeff Nichols.
All right, welcome. Look at this crowd. Got people standing.
Oh, Lord.
Jeff, you're very popular.
I know, it's just for me. Thanks for coming.
Oh, right, sorry. Matthew McConaughey.
He is very popular.
He is.
And getting more popular.
And will be even more after this movie. I know probably most of you haven't seen it yet because it hasn't opened yet. But is there anybody here who actually has seen Mud? Anybody? Anybody? So this event is actually a bit of a preview, and those listening in on the podcast on iTunes will be able to listen to it, and folks here can listen to it again after they see the movie. So what we'll do today is talk a little bit about it. We'll see a couple of clips shortly and get a little bit of a taste of the movie. I was fortunate enough to see it almost exactly a year ago at the Cannes Film Festival, so I can only imagine this time last year you must have been just racing to get it finished.
Yes, you know, I don't remember, it wasn't that pressurized of a situation, you know, but now I'm just dying to get it released, so, you know, it's the different end of the spectrum.
So let's give folks, both those who are here and those who are listening in, let's give them a little preview of the film. Why don't you just describe a little bit about the film, and as you describe it, if you could talk a bit about where the film came from, background.
Sure. Well, you know, it's always hard for me to talk about my films because I really write on two different tracks. As far as plot goes, which is what the majority of people who go to movies, that's what they're concerned about. You know, it's about two 14-year-old boys who find a man hiding out on an island in the middle of the Mississippi River. And they're not sure of his intentions, they're not sure why he's there, and danger ensues. But really, when I was first thinking about this story, I was thinking about a getaway film and this guy hiding out on an island, but I kind of like to turn things on their head a little bit, and I thought about a different way to get into a getaway film would be to have it all from the point of view of this 14-year-old boy. And so suddenly the story started to develop through his eyes, and his plot line and his storyline and his character really started to develop for me. And before you know it, you know, this film about a getaway has morphed into a coming-of-age film about first love and heartbreak and male mentors and our initiation through adolescence. So, yeah.
So why was, picking up on that, why was Matthew McConaughey the right character for that role, for this loner guy who's on this island? Why him?
Well, I can tell you my initial thought. You know, I thought about this idea back in college, back in the late 90s. And, you know, sometimes ideas just, they hit you in the head like a sack of rocks. And this was a man hiding out on an island in the middle of the Mississippi River. It came out just like that. And I was thinking about people I'd like to hang out with on an island. And Matthew McConaughey came up. I'd recently seen Lone Star, probably again and again, because I really love that film. And I was thinking about a guy who could carry a myth on his shoulders, an American legend on his shoulders, but in a realistic way. And I felt like he did that in Lone Star, thanks to his performance and thanks to John Sayles. But I felt like it just made sense. And then I carried that with me over the next decade while I was writing the film. And luckily, when it came time, he answered my phone call.
And you mean if you were 14, if you were Ellis and you found Matthew McConaughey?
No, I want to hang out with you.
On an island.
I personally want to hang. I'd go tomorrow if you want to go hang out. But yes. No, I mean, seriously, like...
We hung out on that island.
We did, and it was awesome. Sam Shepard was there, too. Made it even better. But, you know, there is actually a point in the script when it's up to the boys to decide whether or not they return. He has no control over them. He can't force them back. And so I needed someone would literally want to go back and see, even though he's kind of dirty and crazy and says strange things and you know, definitely has a dangerous feel to him. You want to go back. You're interested, and Matthew has that draw.
Well, let me ask Matthew for the flip side of that same question. Jeff's a guy who is at kind of the promising start of an exciting career. He's really at the beginning, and has done some really great work already. But tell me about the flip side of your interest in this. Your interest in Jeff. Your interest in this character. Your interest in the script. I mean, you certainly don't have to take risks on on younger directors, but there must have been something that struck you so that you would want to spend time with this guy.
Well, as you said, Jeff had 2 quality projects preceding Mud, which stood on their own, which was a nice resume to lay out in front, because everyone can be great in a room.
Anyone
when
seen
it's
Take
their first
Shelter?
time.
Shotgun Stories? 2 really terrific films.
But this script was something like I'd never read before. And then in meeting him, I saw not only what you usually see with the writer-director, if they're young and they've just done it a couple times, or maybe it's their first time, you can hear and understand usually why they wrote it, but you don't always come away from that meeting understanding why they should direct it. It was very clear that he was going to be the director, and he was the DNA of the project, but also he was not talking to me as a writer at that point. He was talking to me as a director. He talked about his different approaches, which made a lot of sense. It was came out of that meeting feeling very confident this guy had a complete control of this, and actually I was more dazzled after the meeting than before, and so I already came in excited about the project, but came out of it and going, again, a little bit of who do I want to go spend that many months on an island? Who do I want to go a year later and be places like this talking about the film? Those decisions come into it a little bit, but mainly it was a guy who had very much control of what he had written, why he had written it, how he was going to direct it. And I've said this before, and I love to repeat it. There's been no film, and I think I've done 40-something, where we shot more of exactly what was on the page. That is what you see on the screen. And what's cut? Besides that one little half scene that you and I...
There are a few things that are cut. But, yeah, there's one scene that you're not in that's cut.
Yeah. There we go. That was
That's why you did.
that was the other thing. I said, okay, here's the deal, though.
It's contractual.
Let me ask you to elaborate on something, Matthew, and that is, you said you were really dazzled by this guy. So what is it about a filmmaker like Jeff? Or maybe what is it about filmmakers that can dazzle you? What kind of conversations do you have with them?
What I mean by dazzling is that it was, and I've said this before, Jeff knows what he knows and doesn't know what he doesn't know. He knows a lot more than he doesn't know. But if he doesn't know something, he says, let me think about that. I'll get back with you. And he always does. What was dazzling is that he wasn't trying to be dazzling. What was dazzling is that the guy who was sitting there was going to direct this thing, this script was his DNA. He was obviously, and you could tell why he wrote it. You see this movie, you know a lot about who he is as a man, independent of being a filmmaker. You do, and I mean that as a compliment. And he is who he is, and he put this up there, and they're his words, it's his story, and that's the man you're working with as well. And so that's not always the case. I've been in many rooms where I hear the pitch, but it's not the person I'm talking to. He's talking about what they're going to be, which is not the case with what it was with Jeff.
Jeff, how'd you get your start? For folks who may not have seen Shotgun Stories a bunch of years ago and Take Shelter a couple of years back, tell us how you got, and those listening in here, tell us how you got started as a filmmaker.
I had a pretty straightforward trajectory. I came straight out of high school and went to North Carolina School of the Arts. It's a small art school in Winston-Salem.
And yet a lot of filmmakers have come out of there.
Yeah, David
recently.
Gordon Green, Craig Zobel, Danny McBride, Paul Schneider. The list kind of goes on, and beyond just the filmmakers that have come out of it, like half the people that worked on this movie, my cinematographer who I've worked with on all 3 films, and if you see some more clips, you'll see, his work as well. He's my go-to guy, and we went to school together. But I grew up in the suburbs of Little Rock, and Little Rock's it's a small city. You drive 5 minutes and you're in the middle of nowhere. And, I got this nice combination of growing up in that I was in the suburbs. I was going to the movie theaters every weekend. I could open the paper any week and have seen every movie twice. But when I went to visit my grandparents in this really small town called Altimer, you don't get more rural than this. But I didn't feel like I was from a small town. I was an observer of small towns. And so I had kind of an outsider's perspective, but I had insider's access. and I kind of always grew up with a love of these places and these people and their stories and their voices. And, at the time, I didn't know those were the foundations of the kind of storyteller I would want to become. But with hindsight, I realize now how important that was. So yeah, came out of high school, went to film school. It was a good school because it was like a trade school. They taught us how to make movies. They didn't bother with too much else. And I came out very determined to make a film. A good friend of mine named David Gordon Green made a movie called George Washington while I was in film school. And I used that as kind of a business model, as kind of a model for the first independent film to make. And I really used that as a model behind Shotgun Stories, not so much creatively or aesthetically, but just as a business model. So, and then Shotgun Stories kind of really started the process.
Very good. Switching gears, Matthew, I think, is it possible that I was just out in Austin and they had an anniversary screening of Dazed and Confused? How is it possible that's been 20 years? You mentioned having made 40 movies.
20 years, yeah. All right.
Dazed and Confused?
All right,
Folks have seen that?
Yeah.
Does it feel weird
Does it feel weird?
Think that it's been 20 years and to have this movie that you made at the start of your career?
No, it feels about 20 years ago. It does, but that movie's got such a wonderful life. It feels 20 years ago, yet it feels like yesterday because it's still live. It's still very present, and in the 2 generations after it was made, everybody continually. I still run into people that are like, I know that guy or I know that girl, and this is someone who was in high school last year. So those characters are still running around, and everyone has those similar last day.
That
of
character
school
might
experiences.
still be in high school, actually.
I hope he is, yeah. And I think he's doing a little late night DJing at home. Rick thinks he's got a few kids, all girls. I think he's probably right.
You've had, and your fans here will no doubt agree, an exceptional past year and a half or so. Really, really terrific year of an array of performances. How's it been for you from the other end of it? You've had such a diverse group of characters you've played and had a really exceptional year. Congratulations on that.
It's been the most exciting and self-satisfying time in my life as far as career goes, for sure.
What happened? What did something
There's
click?
really not, and I've been asked this question a lot, and I've thought about it a lot. There's not a hinge moment of consciousness that I came and made a big decision to say was doing this, now I will do that. I also don't understand. I don't know how to really make decisions like that. I started off saying, no, let's not do these certain things that I was doing because I feel like I can do them tomorrow. And that was really the initiative of it. Was let's look into some things that I don't feel like I can do tomorrow. Some things that scare the shit out of me a little bit. Some things that make me go, I don't know how to do this, but it turns me on, and I want to dive in and figure out how and come up the other side. So I took some time off, and I had a great reason to take time off. I had a family to start, so I was being a father. So that's a pretty good way to spend your time. And as the world works, I started attracting these things, and I got the call from the William Friedkin, Lee Daniels, Steven Soderbergh, Jeff Nichols, Linklater, and so it revolved, and it came back to me, and I read these things, and I was like, you know what, let's go do it, and I did them. And then the other thing is I've been very fortunate. I've been a part of, these have all been substantial films on their own, as films. Whether you like them or not, they have real identity. The films do, and the directors all were very specific in their own identities. There's no guarantee. There's plenty of what you could call good performances that we've never seen by great actors out there that are on the cutting room floor because the movie wasn't worth a damn. So I got very fortunate to come out in films that came out and at least got seen to some capacity, and were good films in their own right, whether you liked them or not.
And we're going to watch a clip in a second. But for those who are just listening in and can't see you, you're looking very trim. It's for a role, I guess. You were really trimmed down for a movie you're shooting.
I'm
now.
on my way back up, though. Yeah. No, I was trim. That one's coming out later in November. I'm on my way back up now. Yeah, it's for something I'm working on right now in New Orleans called True Detective.
Okay. Let's take a look at our first clip from Mud. And Jeff, do you want to set up anything, or should we look at it and then talk about it? You talked about the boys kind of finding this guy?
Yeah, I think given that little scenario, you guys should be all right. But I'll watch it and then I'll explain something later.
Okay, let's
It
take a look at
confuses
our
me.
first clip from Mud. As a follow-up to that scene, Jeff, maybe you could give us a little bit of an idea of working with, finding and working with these kids, and the relationship you developed on screen for them, with Matthew. Tell me
Sure.
about it.
It's always, I don't know about always, it's the first time I've done it. It's scary when you write a piece that hinges on the performance of two 14-year-old boys. You kind of just have to write it and have faith that they're going to be there when you go out looking for them. And in this case, I can speak really highly of them because it's not wasn't my doing. They're incredible. They did the job and then some. Out of the two boys, one of them was in a film before. He was in a film called The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick, and he was the youngest of the three boys. He's not in it a ton, but if you see it, the parts that he's in are really great. You could tell there was an energy there. Of course, when I cast him, I hadn't seen it yet. One of our producers is Sarah Green, who produced The Tree of Life, and she said, you got to meet Ty Sheridan. And when I met him, like I said before the film came out, I just walked in and he looked like Ellis, everything I had in my mind for him. And both these kids, Ty is from East Texas, a town called Palestine, and the other boy, Jacob Laughlin, is from a town in Arkansas, very small. To be honest, I don't even know the name of it, and I grew up in Arkansas. And so I think that was the first thing in terms of where we were looking. We didn't go do casting calls out in LA or New York looking for the kids that have been in movies before. We really looked for kids that were from this place. I mean, they knew how to run a boat. They knew how to, drive a dirt bike. And we didn't have to show them any of that. They could do it better than I could. And so, the first step was just finding kids that fit. Their accents were beautiful, just natural. And not just accent. Accent's not just the way your voice sounds. It's actually the way you form sentences, the way you put words together. And they both had that. Now, a lot of that was baked into the script, but I needed a kid who understood that from the beginning and didn't have to rework his voice in order to fit that. So we went to the source for these kids, but beyond that, they showed up, and I happened to find, and this is just luck, I happened to find two kids who were so intuitive that they understood the subtext of all the scenes that were going on, and that's things that adult actors have trouble with, and these kids, they just got it. So, we chose wisely, but we lucked out too.
Good, Matthew. When you're working on a movie set, just to sort of understand the filmmaking process for me, when you're working with a director who's making his third feature, you're working with kids who've made a couple movies, some of them, or made at least one big movie. Is an actor like you who've been working, who've made 40 movies, are you forced into the role of a teacher or an educator in any way, or is that really the director's role to kind of modulate that, and you're just kind of solo looking at your own? Role?
Not literally. Do I show up with more experience than a lot of people? Sure, but basically, if anyone was out of line or looking how to get in line, the best way I think they can see how to do that is by watching it done that way. I show up prepared. And he shows up prepared. You get into it, because you can sit around and talk about how we're going to do this. I don't know what. Oh my gosh, first spin. No, you show up and you go, man, I'm Mud. You're Ellis. There's a director. You're Neckbone. We're in the Mississippi. This is where we are. Isn't this fun? Most people get to do this for one night on October 31st. We get to do it for 1.5 months. So every day, and let's just do that. And that's part of the fun of what we get to do. So as far as imagination goes, it's fun work. It was fun for me to work with two younger men, because we are playing make-believe, and our job is to make them believe. And so they didn't need... we didn't talk about things. We didn't sit there and talk about processes. Go do it. And I think one of the big advantages when you see children that do pull it off like these two did, they thinking about it. They're not thinking about, oh, this is that shot, I need to look over there and give the Olin Mills smile like Mom told me to do on Easter that day. No, you want to get them out of their head. You don't want them thinking. Neckbone's reactions and his humor and his smart-ass comments talk about accent. It's not just above the neck. It's body language that comes, how he cocks his knee when he says a smart-ass comment. You can't really teach that. So the challenge is you're saying lines that somebody wrote. So you're not just really they're not going out there just being themselves. They have to understand the subtext of the scene. Say lines that somebody else wrote, but make it feel like it's theirs right away.
Right. You talked a second ago about the fun, the make-believe. For you as an actor, is that part of what drives you then? Is that what motivates you to keep doing what you do, or is there something else?
It's what I'm still finding. And luckily I'm finding more and more of it, and I'm going home more evenings happier with my day's performance because I was more childlike, because I let my imagination fly more, because I was able to be more fluid on the day. And so it's just, I think it's, 20 years later, still learning the craft and trying to, I think the ultimate is to feel like, someone else has said this, it's hard work, but hard work when you get it done is really fun. And to remember that we are telling a story, there is a magic to it all. That doesn't mean you don't look at your lines. I got another story I'll tell another time of when I thought that's the kind of actor I was, that I didn't need to look at my lines, that I could just show up and be my man and do it. Well, that works until they hand you 2 pages for the day's scene and it's in Spanish. So I learned that 18 years ago. So you get really prepared, you handle your stuff, and then you show up and you know it well enough to throw it out in the middle of the river and see what happens.
Okay, so I want to get soon to audience questions, but before we do that, let's do one more clip from the film, and then we're going to ask audience questions.
I will preface this one really quickly. These are out of sequential order. We wanted to show you that other one first, just for some reasons. But so this next scene actually happens before the one you just saw. This is when the boys first meet Mud.
All right, let's turn this over to the crowd, and let's see what kind of questions they have.
I've been waiting to ask this question since I saw your Sight and Sound list of favorite movies, and you were the only one that had Cool Hand Luke on there, which is my favorite movie.
Surely not.
Sadly, yeah, it really depressed me. But I was asking this because you cast McConaughey, who I consider very much like Paul Newman, and the name Mud, too. Also, I was seeing if there's a homage to HUD by any chance.
Everything I do is an homage to Paul Newman. You can't get away from it. I'm not a film encyclopedia. I think directors you meet, they can name anything, and I find the films I like and I watch them over and over and over again. And any list that I ever make, because people ask me all the time, always, Cool Hand Luke, HUD, The Hustler, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You just can't get away from them. And I think the thing that Newman and Matthew have in common is, they're these guys that are likable people. You can just tell. It comes out of them. It comes through the screen, into your brain, and you like them. But that's not the end of the story. When, as a storyteller, what I want to do is take that and then build off of it. And so you put them in a role that is questionable, and maybe their motives are questioned. And all of a sudden it becomes this complex, compound statement. But they're able to kind of keep you there through all that. And I think Newman could do that. I think Matthew does that. So, thanks for asking. You didn't talk about Fletch. I thought you were going to talk about Fletch. I was the only one that put Fletch on there, too.
Hi. First of all, thanks for coming out today. My first question is for Jeff. What inspired this movie and the story?
Yeah, to be honest, the very first thing I found, I was walking through the Little Rock Public Library in Arkansas, and I found a photo essay about life on the Arkansas and White River. And it had these people in houseboats. It had some commercial fishermen. And it was a part of my home state that I'd never seen before. And that's really what sparked it. I had to go down there and figure it out. And it's really cool when you're from someplace and you think you know it like the back of your hand to then go find this entire subculture of people living on houseboats that you never knew before. And that was the foundation for it. That's got me thinking about the river and other things. So that was it.
And Matt, what was your first reaction when you read the script?
first reaction when I read the script. Really well written one. I hadn't read a character like that. There was a magical realism to it that was made me feel very young, which the character is very young. There was a real innocence to it, but an honesty, not a naivete about it. And one of the things, and it sort of harps back to when I was saying earlier, you see the film, I think you can tell a lot about who you are as a man. There's so many places that this kind of story can go to sentiment. I've seen it, and I don't like those. I don't find those. I don't think it's humanity. I think it's when it goes to that Hallmark card at the wrong time. I think you go, why didn't you just hang on? And so in his story, even when it's bullets, they land. The mom and dad, if they're having trouble, they're gonna get a divorce. In the end of this story, they don't get all back together. It doesn't really happen. Maybe they will later, but not in this summer. This however many weeks or months it was. And so I found it very human. And everybody, the other thing is everybody, even the so-called bad guys, the ones you're rooting against, they've got good reason to be doing what they're doing. Everyone's got clear incentive and motivation for what they're doing, even if it's wrong, even if it's bad, even if it's against the person you're rooting for. You understand where they're coming from, and you go, yeah, I can understand you taking that action. So in that way, it wasn't convenient, and that's the other thing that happens in a lot of films or stories, scripts that aren't written as well. They'll throw in a convenience and make the bad guy the cookie-cutter bad guy, well, because he looks mean. That's why you'll trust he's bad. No, you understand why everyone's doing what they're doing in this film.
My question is for Jeff. It seems to be an excellent film, and I'm curious if Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn been any of inspiration, I guess, to that?
Certainly, yeah. In fact, it goes beyond just inspiration. I stole some things, which I think is fine. Obviously, there's a scene in the film when they first discover Mudd's character, they see boot prints that have a cross in the heel. It's really just nails that he has in his heel to make the shape of a cross. And that was directly stolen from the way that the boys would recognize Huck's father. They would always know he was around. And also, this is more just trivia, Tom Blankenship is the name of the character played by Sam Shepard, which was the real-life name of the boy that Mark Twain based Tom Sawyer off of. But those are just more kind of fun facts. Really what Mark Twain, who I consider to be one of the greatest writers ever to have lived and written, what he was able to do, especially in Tom Sawyer, was bottle what it felt like to be a child. Not just a child of that period or anything else. Like, it feels like childhood, just reading it. And I wanted to try and do that from a period in my life. I wanted to try and bottle it. And that's what I got from Twain, not to mention wit and everything else. But
Hello. I saw the movie at the Atlanta Film Festival, and I second the motion. A whiff of Huckleberry Finn and definitely magic in the bottle. It's awesome. We all loved it. My question is for Mr. McConaughey. I understand that you have a pretty open mind as far as working with indie filmmaker. What will it take to get you to come down with this Aerostream of yours to Miami and perhaps join us in a couple of projects?
Probably want to read something first. But
Good. If I can find out how to send something for you to read, I'll be more than happy to do it.
very easy. Lady right here. All right.
I'll have you know, I sent this script in 2008. So be patient.
There's a waiting list. Is there a waiting list, Matthew?
Hi, this looks like a really interesting movie, and my question is for Matthew. I'm wondering, how did you prepare for this character? Did you base this on someone in your life, or was this a creative process to get into the role of Mudd?
there was nobody that I knew that I could base it on. I talked a lot with this man who created the character, and he sort of, I mean, it was obvious. It was really well written, even the screen direction. And a lot of times you can have a really good script, but as an actor, you want to get rid of the screen direction right away, just because you want to make your own choices and figure out how they get and what they do and what they don't do. The screen direction was very good in this and told a lot. We talked a lot about movement. Talked a lot about how Mud, as you saw in that second clip, you know, he'll start. He's on the move when he's throwing a line out to the kids. He's yelling over his back shoulder, "Y'all coming?" And that something like that. If you take that literally, you put a blanket over an entire character. It says a lot about who they are. If does he appear in places? He didn't drop out of the sky, but how did he get there? So then from that, if you got a guy like that, then I go, well, that guy doesn't really look you in the eye a lot, does he? You know what I mean? So you find synonymous things and imagination starts to run. So you take the literal, what's on the page, and then let the imagination start to run. And then you have fun creating fun stories. Wait, he's got a chipped tooth, huh? Chipped tooth, how'd he get on the island? How long's he been there? Then it was, for me, the fun part, I think, personally, was going back and understanding the heart of this guy, which is who we all were when we were 14. Before you learn worse about love, before you learn how to protect your broken heart. You know what I mean? So this is a guy who, Ellis is the character who's at that time where he's beating against the ceiling of reality. Mud is the guy who's my age and is never going to come back down to reality when it comes to love, thank goodness. So in that, what that told me was where this guy, I said, if he ever gets grounded, actually, I won't say it because it would be a spoiler, but if he ever gets grounded, he ever so-called got the girl, if they ever really got together, it'd be over. He'd die. Now, keep it in that. I don't want to say too much. But there are things that, the literal informs the imaginative, and then you come back. And then he was always there to share stuff with and always had really good comments. And if I was doing something that wasn't exactly how he saw it, which we were pretty much in sync,
Yeah, I don't really remember.
I don't remember ever really going,
being
oh,
freaked
that's
out
just
about
off.
Yeah.
So that was it, though. Going back to remember when it was 14, before it made sense. Before you started thinking from the shoulders up when it came to affairs of the heart.
Hi there. Thank you very much for coming to present this. It seems like a fantastic film. I guess a question from an Oklahoma Sooner to a Texas Longhorn. Mr. McConaughey, you mentioned earlier about how you like to be challenged by getting outside the comfort zone, and I imagine for many actors that's the case. And I guess this is a question for both of you and Mr. Nichols. How far out of the comfort zone do you see yourself going to the point where someone like Mr. Nichols says, great idea, but this makes no commercial sense? Or, how far can you take that outside the comfort zone?
I'll speak to what I can on that point. Sometimes people go out of the comfort zone, they synonymize that with being eccentric. And then sometimes there are people that I know that make choices for eccentricity's sake. I don't think there's real value in that. I don't think it's making a choice from the subjective place. Do I measure, how commercial could this be? Do we make it? I mean, these kind of films are, number one, just really, really difficult to get made in the first place. A lot of the films I know I've been doing lately were not easy ones. No one's sitting over there lining up going, take our money, please, to get them made. As an analogy, I've always said I enjoy the characters that are on the so-called feeder road, being from Oklahoma, you know what I'm talking about, that have access to the Autobahn, that could have access to a mainstream common denominator in mankind that people go, oh, I get that. Everyone can get that. And that's usually if I can find the humanity in it, that is in that on the freeway, so to speak, that everyone can understand. But it is a bit of an outside the lines character. I like that better because usually those characters have their own personal politics. They're not placating or pandering to what the norm or what society says they have to do. And so there's a certain pleasure that comes with those fringe type characters, if you can still give them the humanity that anyone can understand, you know. So I guess if that's one way of answering your question, but not say, you know, out of the box, different characters. How different? I'm not looking to be eccentric for eccentricity's sake. I'm not looking to go, wow, that'd be really weird, wouldn't it? I wouldn't know where I get no fuel from that. That doesn't turn me on. It's just other than. I'm not trying to do things because I can. I'm into doing things because I kind of want to now, and that just, you know, I've been there before where I did things because I could, you know. So I'm trying to work from because I want to.
Hey, Matthew. It's great to meet you. Since you are the sexiest man in the world, what's your secret?
Alive. That's what it said on cover.
So she said, "What's your secret?" That was her question.
What was what?
What's your secret? She said.
What's your secret of being the sexiest man in the world?
That's yours.
Give us some
That's all
pearls.
yours.
Take that one?
I can leave.
Give us some
Last
pearls of
question.
wisdom.
That's a great question. Can you help me? Secret.
Exercise.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
throw some
yeah,
out there
yeah.
until you grab one. Diet.
Clean socks.
Clean living.
Kind of clean living. Yeah. Not too clean living, but just clean up. Oh, I sense of humor. We'll go with that easy one right there.
Do you guys live in Texas? Do you live in Austin?
I do. Yes.
I do as well.
Does that make things a little easier being outside of, I don't know?
It does for me. You know, I made that decision pretty early on. I wasn't a New York or an LA kind of guy, but I'm real lucky. I kind of threaded a tough needle to thread, and I get to hang out in Austin. It's nice.
It's a fun place. The film is called Mud, and those here in New York, in the Apple Store here in Soho, will have a chance to see it very soon. Coming this Friday, you can see it. Those listening in on iTunes should check the film's website for release dates. And the website, if someone, I'm looking over to my left, Nationwide Friday. Check it out.
Go see it, please.
And thank you. Let me just please join me in thanking Matthew McConaughey and Jeff Nichols.
All right, guys, join me together in thanking our panel, and once again, thanking you guys for being such a great audience. Thank you so much.